Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the city of Madeira Beach. I'm Robin Gomez, the Madeira Beach City Manager. Thank you all so very, very much for coming out on a Saturday morning to our 2022 Hurricane Expo. Appreciate all of you being here and listening to a few speakers and reminding everybody what we do before, during, and after the storm. But hopefully we will not have any storms this year. That's what obviously we pray and hope for every year, but inevitably we're likely going to be impacted by a storm or another. Before we begin the entire program, just want to remind everybody we are celebrating our 75th year as a city. Madeira Beach incorporated back in 1947. So you will see in the back and in our lobby, we have a lot of prints. These prints are available for people to purchase, as well as tote bags and T-shirts and hats. So take a few minutes and take a look in our lobby, etc. But here to talk about hurricanes, and not the University of Miami Hurricanes, which is where I went to school, but we're here to talk about what we do, how to prepare, and what we do during the storm and what we do after. So please always feel free to ask questions. Visit the vendors that are outside. We have a few of our departments, our Public Works, Fire, Marina, and other department representatives here. We're giving sandbags to City of Madeira Beach residents only, and also a lot of information, how to stay safe year-round in your home by having smoke detectors, having an evacuation plan, should there be a fire or other emergency in your home. But obviously we're having some issues with the county system to register to receive your placard, but if you leave your name and information at our front lobby, we will then reach back out to you to obtain that pass. So I'm now going to introduce and give a welcome our mayor, City Madeira Beach Mayor John Hendricks. Mayor, come on.
Thank you, Robin. First, I want to apologize for Robin going to the University of Miami rather than University of Florida or USF. But Robin's a great addition to the city, and he's been all over. I think he probably knows quite a few of you. I know he's been all over to the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Every day he's walking the beach or walking the pass or walking the neighborhoods and getting to know everyone. So he's doing such a great job for us. We've held this a number of times over the past years. A little point I want to mention to y'all, that's the sandbags. This past year, when we had, was it Irma that came through that we filled so many sandbags? The county, Pinellas County, I think gave out 28,000 bags. Of those 28,000 bags, Madeira Beach not only gave out 12,000 bags, but we also filled 12,000 bags. So we did a lot of work, and what I was glad to see then was a lot of you went through Eta, which wasn't even a hurricane, but Eta came straight in on us, and people weren't prepared. The fire department did, I think, 50 rescues that night, the night of Eta. I think around 50 houses ended up having to be demolished because of the flooding. What I will say is when a storm is coming, one, get prepared, but two, get out. Because there comes a point when the fire department can't go out there and rescue you. The fire trucks can't get through that high water. So if you're new here, the floods do come, and they come straight in on us. So the biggest thing I can say is be prepared. If you've got an old dock out there, take that dock down, because they're getting washed away not only in storms but in high tides, and they're floating around. They're an obstruction to navigation. People are hitting them in their boats. Worms are getting in the pilings. These pilings are breaking off. If you've got an old dock, get it out of there and just have no dock at all if you aren't using it. But the Coast Guard Auxiliary does great work here, and they see it on a daily basis. The fire department works hard for you. It's a great group. This whole city is such a great group. And we want you residents to be safe out there in a storm. And the biggest thing is, people say it won't happen to me. I'm on the highest street in Madeira Beach, and I was about a foot from being flooded this last storm, or when Eta came through, not the hurricane. But anyhow, be prepared, and when the time comes, get out, take your pets out, and get your vehicles out. When you see a street flooded, don't drive through it. It's salt water. It's going to ruin your car. So just keep those things in mind. There's a lot of people that have presentations today. It's all good information. Please use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And now we'll move on to Public Works. What to do, again, before the storm. And walking up here and speak to you for a few minutes is Megan Webb, our Public Works Director.
Hello, everybody. We don't like to talk about storms, but unfortunately, it's coming. So from the Public Works standpoint, the most important thing is prepare your yard. We do brush pickup in Madeira Beach every Wednesday. We do an 8x4 area. All I ask from you is please don't put it in the street, and please don't put it over the top of a storm drain. We're having a lot of that lately. Do this prior to a storm, prior to hurricane season. For us, we've just in the last weekend storms that we've had, we have a lot of residents doing it on the weekend. While we appreciate it, it blows all over the streets, and then it ends up in the storm drains, and it ends up clogging the drains, and then we have flooding. So with that being said, if we could try, even if we do it mid-May, any Wednesday, if you have a pile larger than an 8x4 area, call me. We'll make arrangements. We'll pick it up. We will waive fees probably a week prior to. I won't charge you unless it's like a 20-foot pile. But if it's smaller than, 10-foot pile, we can accommodate that. Other than that, please contain your mulch, your rocks, and your yard. If we flood, we have mulch that ends up all over the streets. Again, ends up in the storm drains, clogs the drains. In Boca Ciega, we have valves. They have a flap. They have rubber. If those items get in between that rubber flap and the outside of that valve, they will not close, which means the water will then flow back up into the street, and therefore we got flooded streets. Other than that, we talked about sandbags. I have sandbags outside. In the event of a hurricane coming, we will open up our public works yard, and we do have a sand pile there. If you need sand currently, just come over there. It's accessible. You just have to come through the marina, and then we'll have shovels. Any questions? No? Thank you.
So Megan, when should we start preparing our yard? Right now. Would be a great time. Have trees trimmed, bushes, et cetera, particularly trees would be extremely, extremely helpful. And now turn it over to the marina, Krabby, with some guidance and suggestions, particularly for boats, docks. This is Brian Crabtree, otherwise known as Krabby, our marina manager.
Krabby. Good morning. Who in here has boats that they have in Madeira Beach? Okay. All right, so if there's several ways that you store your boat, either you have it in the water at your dock or you have it on a boat lift. I'm going to start with the easy one. If you have your boat on a boat lift, if you can get it onto a trailer, that's going to be your best option, is to go ahead and put it in a trailer, get it to high ground. If you don't have access to a trailer, then there are ways to secure your boat on the boat lift. First is to remove the drain plug from the boat that's on the lift, because a lot of boats can fill with water if you have pump failures or battery failures or anything like that. Excuse me. So remove the drain plug so that the water will run out of the boat so the boat doesn't sink or get real heavy and break the lift, snapping the lift. I've seen that here in Madeira Beach before. So remove the plug if possible. If not, make sure your batteries are fully charged up, because there's a possibility of you losing power to your dock. Even when the tide comes up, it's a good idea to shut the power off to your dock. That way you don't have any electrical current running through the water out there. So remove the drain plug. Make sure you got power to it before everything's charged up. If you can't remove it, and then secure the boat on the lift. And what I mean by that is during a storm, the winds will make the boat lift sway a lot. So you want to secure it to the pilings on the lift, so the boat's not doing a lot of swaying. If you raise the boat up to the very top of the lift, that's not good for the lift. It'll actually snap the cables. So you want to leave it at a good height, probably about 3 feet above your dock, but not way, way up high, because that's when a lot of times they will break. The cables will break on the boat lifts. So get it up high, secure it so it doesn't move around a lot, so it's nice and, secured to the dock so you don't get a lot of shaking around and the boat doesn't break the lift and go in. If your boat is stored in the water, what you want to do is double line everything. And by that I mean if you have a bow line, have 2 bow lines. If you got stern lines, 2 stern lines, 2 spring lines, everything doubled up. Put as many fenders out as you can, and just make sure that you leave a little bit of slack in the lines, because if you're going to have tide rise, then you're going to need slack in the lines. Tied to the pilings, not to your dock. Because like the mayor mentioned about docks coming apart, when there's a lot of stress on the dock cleats and things like that, it'll actually pull parts of the dock up, and then you're not tied to anything at all. So tie to the pilings, because the pilings are the strongest part of your dock. Make sure if your boat's in the water that the batteries are fully charged, all your pumps, float switches, all that stuff is working, and shut the power off prior to the storm to the boat, just so you don't cause any power surges or fires on the boats, things like that. So if you have any questions about any of that, just come see me at the marina or give me a call anytime. I'm there to help you, but prepare early and have an idea, have a plan ready for your boat, because it's really not, it's in the back of your mind. Your house and your property is kind of first. The boat, you think, oh man, I got to do something with the boat. So have a plan ready for your boat. Have those lines ready for your boat. We sell lines. I can cut lines to any length, and make sure your insurance is paid. So other than that, if you have any questions about securing your boat or your docks or anything like that, just come let me know at the marina. We're there all the time. We're there 7 days a week. Any of the guys can help you.
I just wanted to mention, when you evacuate, turn the power off to your dock.
Yes.
With the flooding, yeah, to the house too, for that matter, yeah, and maybe even your water supply to your house. But there have been a number of electrocutions with
Yes.
people waiting out on their docks, not realizing receptacles on the docks are underwater. So that's really important to do, is to turn that power off. And I actually made that mistake myself during ETA, where I was wading in water 3 feet deep over my dock, not even thinking about, well, now the receptacles are underwater. So when you evacuate, and please be sure and evacuate, turn that power off.
Yeah, we always at the marina, everybody needs to be off their boats. We don't allow people to stay on them. You got to go, and we shut the power off to make sure that there is no any kind of electrocution risk at all. And the boat, it's wood and fiberglass. It's replaceable. So don't try to ride it out there to save your boat. I see people take their boats out and anchor them up out in what they call a safe harbor. There's nothing really safe. Things can go wrong so fast on a boat, and there's nobody there to really help you. And it's almost kind of, I would, almost would say selfish to, risk the Coast Guard and risk Marine Patrol or anybody else out there to try to save your life for that reason. So just, secure your property as best you can. And, that's what, unfortunately, that is what insurance is for. So, just life is precious. So just make sure you take care of that first. And if you have any questions about your boat or anything about your boats, come see us at the marina. Thank you.
Thank you, Krabby, and I also want to thank Pinellas County Government, Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. You may have seen, read, or heard that they did remove 22 boats out of the Hurricane Hole area near Bay Pines next to the school, so we greatly appreciate their work, their involvement, and they're finishing up today. The last 2 boats were removed yesterday, so hopefully they'll finish restoration by early next week. Also, how many of you lived here during it wasn't unnamed storm within the last 2 years? And how about during ETA? Well, that was ETA, I guess. And Hurricane Irma? See, we're here. Anybody here when Hurricane Andrew went through here? Yeah. Well, it sort of didn't go through here, but you did get a lot of thunderstorms. Yeah. I was a junior at the University of Miami, and it was a pretty interesting experience when there's nothing left of the campus but the hurricane-built towers, and looked like a bomb had exploded if you saw any of those images, and yeah, pretty impactful. And now I'll turn it over to our Fire Chief Clint Belk, and we have some of the engine is out front with the evacuation flag. We also have Hilltop, maybe we have a new rescue boat that went into service on March 1st, and I think it's still right over here, right? Yep. They haven't gone on a call, thankfully.
Not yet. Not yet. Good morning. So Megan talked about preparation prior to the storm. What I'm going to talk about is during the storm. So at this point, you've secured all your possible airborne debris. You've got any supplies you possibly needed. So with Tropical Storm Eta is the one that really caught us all off guard. When we have enough notice, say with Hurricane Irma, everybody has time to prepare. Nobody expected what we got with Tropical Storm Eta. So evacuation wasn't issued. I did get calls at the fire department and people asking me, should we evacuate? And I leave it on you. If you feel like you should evacuate, evacuate. Don't wait to be told. If you do evacuate, make sure you flip your main circuit breaker on your electrical panel and also your generator, because once that power goes out, your generator is going to start thinking that your house is out of power and it's going to try to continuously power your home. If you do decide to stay, there could be a good chance that if you call 911, we will not be able to get to you. Like the mayor stated, that we will run until we just possibly can't run anymore. I make a determination, go or no go. And if it's too dangerous for my firefighters to go out there, we don't go. And there's actually a Pinellas County SOP that dictates once the winds get to a certain mile per hour, we don't go any longer. And so it was really disheartening when Tropical Storm Eta came through and we were in a no-go situation and people were still calling 911, and me and Fire Inspector Perez, we would have to tell them, we just cannot get to you right now. And also, as the mayor stated, the salt water will wreak havoc on your personal vehicles. It killed our ladder truck to the tune of almost $20,000 worth of repairs. And with they will do everything they can possibly do to try to get to you. But if you need to evacuate, I strongly encourage you to evacuate. If you do decide to stay and you start experiencing flood waters, again, make sure you flip those two circuit breakers, the main on your electrical panel, and then for your generator as well. Your generator will have a kill switch. If you have solar panels too, there's two main disconnects. Flip the disconnect. Again, as the mayor stated, people are getting electrocuted. I think they had a couple deaths down in Manatee County for that, people waiting through their house and getting electrocuted because the power was still on. Don't turn your power on. Once everything is kind of subsided, don't come back and just flip your power on. Assess everything. Make sure everything's dried out. The electrical part of this is really the biggest thing as far as flooding goes. With the wind and everything, the tropical storm or hurricane rated winds, the securing of outside debris, we call them missiles. You make sure you don't have any of that out there loose. Again, choosing to write it out, it has possible consequences that you must be willing to accept. So if you have a family, look at your children. Should we take this chance? I strongly encourage everybody to evacuate. Shut your power off, evacuate. It's all material things. We can replace all of that stuff. Do you have any questions for me? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, well, the good thing is we have enough notice when a storm is projected to come this way, and the next day or two before the storm, you'll have enough time to kind of gauge what it's going to be and if it's going to even be a hurricane or a tropical storm, or now they're even adding flooding as part of the protocol for issues that are going to happen with the storm. So I would suggest if you need to get a hotel, if you don't have family, go ahead and book a hotel. You can cancel it, if you don't need it.
Right.
But that's what I would suggest, get to the mainland, get to the Largo area. That's a non-flood zone. I believe Clearwater is, parts of Clearwater anyways,
Okay.
inland Clearwater.
Yeah, so Lago is a good spot
Yep.
to kind of head to
Yeah.
if we needed to.
Yep,
Okay.
yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you
And
so
I
much.
only know that because I lived in Largo, and I was in the highest point in the entire Pinellas County. So
Thank you.
absolutely. To speak a little bit on what we also do is you lose power, you lose water, you can't shower, what do you do? So Fire Inspector Perez has started a community risk reduction program, and part of that is our hygiene kits. So it has like baby wipes and whatnot, and I'll allow him to come up and speak a little bit more on that. Yes, sir.
If you have your pass and you're gone for a while, do you still need your pass to get back on? Or is there a
Absolutely.
period that the
You-
passes are no longer, like, let's say it hits and a month from now we come back, do we still need our pass to get back on?
Probably not, but the point of the pass is to keep people who do not live out here off the island. You evacuate and then you have somebody come in here and, possibly break into your
Right,
home
I
or what.
understand that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So after a month, hopefully the city's back to normal operating
I
procedures.
asked the question, there's no time limit on these passes, right?
No, you don't have to come back.
Unless you move different building.
Yep, if you move to a different place, then you have to get a new pass. You're welcome. Any other questions? No? All right, that's it.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Raul Perez. I'm the fire inspector for Madeira Beach Fire Department. And as my chief Belk just said, I developed a new program. It's called Community Risk Reduction. And so it's many programs under that one name. And so as he was talking about the hygiene kits, now these are either for after a fire. So if your house gets burned down or something, you guys have nothing else to take with you. We developed these hygiene kits. And some of you have already seen them. They do come with a comb, toothbrush, washcloth, toothpaste, wipe towels, shaving cream, hand sanitizers, soap, everything that could possibly take care of you for at least a day or two, until you guys can get somewhere where you could get more things for a little bit longer of a period. So we have these. If you guys haven't seen them, come over to our table. We have about 3 of them so you guys can take a look, see what's in them. They're pretty cool. And even after a storm or a fire, I'm usually going to be there. So if I see you guys that you guys are in need of something, I'm going to give 1 bag per person in that household. So everybody has their own, okay? The other thing I want to talk about is, so before, hopefully, I can get you guys to have me come down, and what I do is called a home safety check. Just call me up, schedule it. I will come out and take a look at your house. I'll look at your receptacles, your electrical, your mats on the floor, anything that I would think that would be unsafe for you. I would suggest changing it or give you other options, right, to make your home safe. This book right here has a whole bunch of checklists that I can go through, and this is the book that I use, and we'll sit down and talk about it afterwards, okay? It makes it safe for you, your family, your friends, and especially the elderly. We have a huge, most of our calls here in Madeira Beach are because the elderly fall, and a lot of the times they can't get up, right? I know you guys heard those commercials, and so it's either because of the shoes they're wearing, they're not walking with their walker, or it's the rug. It's many different things. The tile or rug or something slips, numerous things. I also have access to change some of those things for you guys. So if you guys want me to come down and we can talk about it, I'm free. That's what I'm here for, okay? Not just inspecting for fires and doing pre-plans, but I also do home inspections for free. Doesn't cost you anything. I'm not going to write a violation. This is just for your information, all right? We at the fire department are giving out Free smoke detectors. The way to get these is just give me a call. I will come over, you tell me how many you need, and I'll come over and replace them for you. Now, that's the way I have to do it. My contract with American Cross is our provider for these kitty smoke detector tests. They last 10 years. Great deal, right? So, so for 10 years, or every 10 years, you get them replaced for free, okay? Another thing I do have, and I know quite a few have taken these. These are great, okay? These are called the File of Life, and it goes on your refrigerator. It helps us, firefighters and paramedics, to get to know who you are if you are unconscious or if you're with somebody that really doesn't know your medical history background. You will fill this whole thing out. You don't have to put your social security down if you don't want to, okay? But we do need your date of birth, okay? It has your emergency contacts, your doctors, what hospital you prefer to go to, if you have any allergies to medications, your next of kin, who do we contact? If you have pets, there's a spot for them back here too, okay? Fill these out, and put them on the refrigerator. That's one place where we'll look first, okay? These are also free. They're at my table outside if anybody would like one, okay? I am also the CPR instructor for Madeira Beach. So if anybody is looking to learn CPR, first aid, AED, I teach the class. We do have one coming up on May 4th is the next one. Just give the fire department a call and sign up for it. If you're a resident, it's free, right? Free. If you're not a resident, it's $25. Okay, the class is usually about 3-4 hours long. Another thing we also do, at the same time I'm doing this, the home safety check is the welfare check, right? A lot of people go home or get discharged from the hospital. They still have a lot of questions that just are still lost. They have discharge papers, but they don't read them, or they weren't told exactly what they were there for or what these medications are for. I can help you out. I can take your blood pressure, go over your medications, tell you what they're for, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any questions about anything I have up here? If not, yes, ma'am. 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock in the morning. Making sure. People showing up at 9 at night, imagine that. So I got everything that I have up here is going to be on the table outside. If you guys don't have any questions now, you can come and talk to me afterwards. And thank you guys for coming out. Have a good day.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Inspector Perez. And then to continue after the story, well, one quick thing. Under the city's emergency management page on our website, madeirabeachfl.gov, there are guides of what the suggested preparation and during and after for each month. So please go to our site. These come straight from Fema and more guidance as to what you can do to prepare. And so now to continue after the storm, we have our Community Development Department, Jenny Rowan, our Senior Planner. Come on up, Jenny.
Hello, good morning. So I'm here to talk to you about the FEMA 50% rule. This rule is very important because it could mean repairing your house to demolishing and raising up your house. Now, all communities regulate their FEMA 50% rule a little differently. So here in Madeira Beach, if your home is not elevated up to floodplain standards, then you can improve your house up to 50% of the depreciated value of the structure. That's not the site, it's just your house, within every 12 months. So, for example, if you have a home and the depreciated value is $100,000 And in April 1st, 2022, you decide to do some renovations that are valued at $40,000. You have $10,000 up into that next April 1st, 2023. And at that April 1st, 2023, you get back that $50,000 to do renovations to your home. So this is very important with hurricane season coming up because this FEMA 50% rule is in effect all the time. So if your home is devastated by a flood, you still have to go within this 50% rule. Now to find your 50%, you can either go to the Pinellas County Property Appraiser's website, and they have a tab right on that, on your property that says FEMA 50%, and you can find out your number there. We also accept third-party appraisals, and we can find your 50% there as well. So this is very important to remember, especially during flood season. And if you have any questions, you can always ask the city. Another program building and planning do right after a big storm is we drive through every single street and we assess all the properties within Madeira Beach. We're looking for damage and how high the flood went. And we do this to help improve our flood maps as well. So if your home is beyond restoration and you're on the ground, you can ask the building department to do a walkthrough, and we can use this to write a letter for your insurance to verify that the renovations would exceed that 50%. Some insurance companies ask this when you're asking for a payout to demolish your building and raise up. So knowing what's in your flood insurance is also extremely important. Pinellas County has free technical assistance from flood insurance advocates, and these advocates are insurance professionals. So on Pinellas County's website, you can find a full list of insurance advocates to contact. And if you have any questions, please let me know. Anything? Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Important information for homeowners. And we'll call back up Megan to continue what to do after the storm. For a little bit more.
Hello again. So for Public Works, as soon as we are able to get back onto the island, dependent on the severity of the storm, our first priority is to clear the streets. If you all remember during Irma, we had a tree down over by McDonald's. Our first task was to get that tree out of the street, clear the street so that fire can get through to get whoever needs help, also the building department. After that, we will then do our best to get to your items as quickly as we can. During Irma, I know we keep going back to that, but I think that was something that we all remember. We had a tremendous amount of brush that we had to pick up. That was more of a windstorm. Because of the severity of the storm and the amount of Florida that was hit, the debris contractors were not able to get here quick enough. So city workers then went out with our claw truck to pick up the debris, and then we took it back to our yard. I don't know if any of you have seen our yard, but our yard is not that small. It's a decent size. We had a debris pile there that was probably 50 feet high, and it took weeks to get that out of there. So we will do everything in our power for our residents to get your items cleared as quickly as possible. With damage from floods, make sure you take your pictures because unfortunately our sanitation crew is, well, not unfortunately, but fortunately for our residents, they are awesome. They're too fast. They were picking up items too quickly before insurance adjusters were able to get out there. So make sure you document everything. And if for some reason we are delayed, we will do our best to put it out on social media to let you all know that we are working as quickly as we can, but we're gonna try to get everything as quickly and as whatever we can do. Any questions? No? Thank you.
And I'm sure most of you are, hopefully all of you are aware, so we are responsible for our residents, businesses, visitors here within our city. But of course, we follow Pinellas County Emergency Management's lead, essentially. They're the ones that issue a lot of the orders, issue the evacuations, et cetera, the formal ones. So We have a representative from Pinellas County Emergency Management. Come on up, Joe. Say a few words. Thank you. You're welcome.
And thank you to Madeira Beach for always having an all hazards approach and a hurricane conference with his residents every year. That's really great to see the preparedness. Joe Boris, Operations Manager for Pinellas County Emergency Management. You've already heard a lot of great stuff, especially from Krabby. I love that I had that as a note to make sure I touched on boats as well too. But at Pinellas County, we do ask some things of our residents, and we look at, no matter where you live, everybody's our resident, right, over the county. So, you know, know your risk. So we talked about your risk, and your risk out here is certainly is flooding. You know, Etta was a good example of that. That storm came in at a nice obtruse angle and at high tide and full moon, and yeah, we saw some flooding in the streets and things like that. And unfortunately, folks left their homes and went out on the street and they encountered even deeper water. So that's not something we want you to do, but understand your risk. So about the trees around your home and things like that. You'll know or hear that we've looked at the National Hurricane Center's latest slosh model runs for storm surges for our area. And we've changed some evacuation zones for some folks, unfortunately, to a higher risk. Madeira Beach and the Bear Islands risk remains the same. You are Cat 1, evacuation A, all the time. So that's important to understand. And why are we ordering an evacuation? It is for the storm surge. We're looking at the storm surge. If we're ordering evacuation, it's because it's life safety, it's life risking storm surge. We didn't order evacuation for Etta because the water wasn't going to get that deep. It got deeper than we expected, and the Hurricane Center expected, only because of the way it did kind of sharply turn in a little bit. But you could have remained in your homes, and yes, you may have been wet, ankle deep. Even I saw pictures of knee deep water, and yes, but it wasn't going to be the life safety risk. But good point about turning off the breakers. If the water is starting to intrude into your home, you should go ahead and flip that main breaker, right, and to the dock as well too. So knowing that the hurricane is coming, we're going to order the evacuation based on storm surge, and we're going to give you a start and end time, because it takes a lot of time from an A level to a E or Category 5 level. And we've analyzed that and mapped all that out. So the end time is when you should be at your safe place. And we ask you to go tens of miles, not hundreds of miles. So yes, if there's hotels available in Largo and some of the high ground that we have, that's great. You may have to go a little farther. What we really have been asking of late is folks that are in non-evacuation zones to offer their homes up to folks that are in evacuation zones. So let's say I'm a C evacuation, but it's only an A evacuation. I can invite those friends into my home and things like that, because we know that people don't like to ask for help. So it's just a nice idea of folks, if you're in a non-evacuation, to invite folks in. So know your risk. Your risk is storm surge, and if your home's older than 2000, the year 2000, most likely you don't have any of the wind loads and things like that you can handle for a hurricane. That's something else to consider as well too. So once you know your risk, again, storm surge for y'all, and winds, have a plan. And having a plan, yes, you saw the kits and the hygiene kits and having all your paperwork together and everything like that. But it's also being able to exercise that plan and execute that plan as well too. So take the boats. That was a great point about the boats. But if you have your boat on the davits, right, and your trailer is off at a lot that you rent to keep your trailer there, and you haven't used it in a while, and now you have to evacuate, well, we know what happens with that, right? The tires have lost some air, things like that. It's rusted. You don't know that it works. That's not the time to find that out when you're trying to get it off your lift, onto your trailer, and out of harm's way. So executing your plans and making sure that you can fulfill that, knowing where you're going to go ahead of time will make a lot less stressful evacuation if you know where you're going to evacuate to. So have a plan and prepare and exercise that plan. And then stay informed. There's a lot of great information. Mike's Weather Page, certainly, but I also ask you to use local trusted sources as well, too. There are some folks out there that are just, weekend warriors that put out their weather information and things like that. And even it's important because even when we work with the National Weather Service, Tampa Bay Ruskin office, when they say a storm and those lines are coming through and they give the hour and all that, we have to pay attention because the hour is different for Citrus County than it is for Tampa Bay. It could be a matter of during daylight hours for citrus, but overnight for us for tornadic activity. And that's important because overnight people are asleep and don't have their devices on. So we like to message that. If it's overnight, you're going to hear more warnings from us about that, making sure that you have ability to be waking up for a tornado warning. So it's really important to pay attention to the local sources of information, hopefully your city here, Madeira Beach, and Pinellas County government as well too, about what to do for a hurricane. Or any storm or hazards that are coming our way, we'll be putting out our local messages as well, too. And I noticed, just want to follow up by taking some notes from all the great stuff. So the evac timing, so life safety and risk. I talked about the boat trailers. Oh, and the 50% rule. So that was a great point about how you can improve your home along the way using the 50% rule. But I would say, review your insurance. What we saw with Edit 2 is loss of use. So let's say your home is damaged and you are able to repair it using the 50% rule. You want to make sure you have insurance so that, you're still paying your mortgage, you're paying to repair your home, and now you're renting somewhere else. So having that rider, and that's a separate thing you have to request, having that loss of use insurance could help you greatly. So that's something to plan for. I know it's a little bit more of an expense, but man, it's priceless when you need it. So consider that. And then, being properly insured too, because let's say you do trip over the 50% after your home has been flooded. And flood is insidious damage. When it gets up above the electrical outlets and things like that, it exponentially goes up in cost to repair your home. So it's just something to consider that if you want to move back into that lot and live there, are you properly insured to rebuild and things like that? So that's something to consider as well too. And then again, I mentioned about the flooding. We're going to order an evacuation if it is life safety flooding. And that's, there's quite a few formulas to go in there, how much water will spill over. It takes a bit of water to get high, but we make sure that when we look at the evacuation zones that we look at 18 inches of water or greater in your home, because that's when it gets to the electrical outlets and it becomes risky. So we're going to order that evacuation again, though. If we don't and you get some flooding in your home, I just ask you to shelter in place and be careful, because something to consider too about that, what Etta that people were responding to was their cars were out there in their driveways or in the street, and the street was lower than the base elevation of their homes, right? So there was 2 inches of water in their home maybe, but there was 3 foot of water out there and it was inside their cars, right? It got in through the doors and everything like that. So, think about that too, protecting your car if there is some flooding and things like that. Those are some personal responsibility things that you need to do. But if we order an evacuation and you don't evacuate, so your car's out there, you're out there. And the same with the condo owners. If you're in a condo, I know you think you're up high, you're going to evacuate up. But if you lost your elevator and then your car is flooded out there and now you're in, heat rises in a condo and things like that. So is that really where you want to be until things are repaired? So, think about leaving when there's an evacuation order, going somewhere safe so that things can be restored to order, and then you're able to move back into your home safely. And then get involved. There's a lot of opportunities on our website to get involved with us at Emergency Management. There's CERT teams, Community Emergency Response teams, and other activities you can get involved in if you want to help out post-impact. No, we don't. Other than there's some offices closed or things like that, you could probably go and park there. But yeah, look for, maybe the mall and things like that. Be wary of the signs, tow zones and things like that. But yeah, it's something to consider as high ground and where you would put it. Anything else? All right, well, very good.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. And yeah, just remember, always be prepared, and avoid the Madeira Beach t-shirt, the hurricane evacuation plan. Grab beer, run 1, grab beer. 2, run like HE double hockey sticks. Great t-shirt, but be prepared, have your plan, etc. Now I'm going to introduce Charles Slambert with the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary right here in Madeira Beach. Mr. Lambert, come on up.
I don't know about you guys, but I sure feel a lot better after hearing these speakers. I mean, you've even got a city manager who went through a hurricane. And what's a hurricane when it hits ground? It's a tornado, and Andrew had 78 in it. And Krabby, instead of doing that PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to offer it to you to put on your city website. Guys, I'm here to talk primarily about boats and docks. And you got 4 stages. You got your inspection stage where you're going out, which is now. They talked about time cycle for preparation. You're going out now and you're actually inspecting everything. You're inspecting that boat, that dock. Do you have mooring lines? You move into preparing. You're buying the equipment you need to secure your boat. Then you're going through the process of securing that boat. Krabby hit on many excellent things. One of the beauties of Madeira Beach is that you do have some real hurricane holes. Over here behind Nellie's Marina, over here behind the ice plant. If you can get your boat out of the normal surge of the moving tide, particularly over at Nellie's with those high-rise buildings, it's totally protecting those boats from those heavy winds when they first come through. And Andrew, there was a marina down there that had over 200 boats in it, and none of them were damaged. It was off of the intercoastal. It had mangroves all around it. The boats were well protected. Everything else in 3 counties was lowered. Many of the things, obviously, about your boats is the same thing that you see in your house. Your preparation stage, which is now, you need to literally video or take pictures of your boat, inside out, all of your equipment. Remember, you cannot buy insurance on your boat nor your house with an impending storm coming. You want to be sure those are current. You want to get all your documentation and all of your electronics off of your boat when you're in that securing stage. Remember, you're not going to be able to get back on this island for a while. And Sheriff's Department and local law enforcement can only do so much to protect your property. If you have a large boat, you want to go even further. You want to take duct tape and literally, after you remove everything that you can remove, particularly those things that can't be replaced, those things of value and documentation, Xerox that documentation, put it in Ziploc bags, put it back on your boat if you're worried about people knowing who it is. Take that duct tape and even duct tape your windows shut even though they have latches on them. Duct tape your cabinets, your drawers, your doors, anything that moves on that boat, tie it down because once the wind starts, it's going to take it all at one time. And when we talk about wind, someone asked a question, when do I prepare? Guys, you don't want to prepare. You want to be done 72 hours before that storm's supposed to be here. You get those warnings at 24 hours and hurricane watch 36, the warning at 24. It's too late then to begin. By then, you're worrying about family, you're worrying about your house, you're worrying about where am I going, and you should have already been there. When we talk about wind and water, we're talking about 70 to 130 mile an hour winds. We're talking about a potential to have a 6-foot wave going down the intercoastal out here. And we're talking about all those tornadoes that are associated with it. Krabby was right on target on tying your boats down. Get them on a trailer. If you've got a trailer, tie that trailer to concrete slabs, tie that trailer to trees. If you've got a larger boat and you've got it out in the bayou, it's a narrow channel. Once the boats leave, cross-tie that thing to both sides of the channel. A royal palm tree is the equivalent of a 500-pound anchor. You need to think ahead for these types of things. Krabby's already told you you're recharging your batteries so your bilge pumps will work. You're being sure you got those plugs pulled. They talked about the docks. You tie these things high on the dock. Remember, this water can rise 10 foot, and in some storms it's even been 20 foot up. But it can also go down particularly in this area, to where you're sitting on the bottom. Give yourself enough line to let that go up and down. Otherwise, you're going to pop your cleats, and you're probably going to end up sinking your boat. I tell you, I think that presentation would be a lot more effective if you put it online than anything I could stand here and say. The Coast Guard is here to serve you. We've been here since late 1860s when lighthouses. That storm, and it wasn't even a hurricane, it was because the storm of 1848 created Johns Pass. World War II, we had dogs and ponies literally out here on the beach doing submarine watches and tracked and found quite a few submarines during that period of time. We're over at 299 Bogosiega Drive. We'd love for y'all with boat or interest in boating community, boating safety, to come visit us. We teach 78 courses that are free, and we teach a boating safety course the first Monday of each month. And if you've got kids 12 years old or up, we'd love to have them. Mr. Manager, thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Appreciate the great info. And to close out our program with presentations, I will bring up Mike's weather page and all the information that's available online. As was stated earlier, there is quite a bit out there, and remember, here's one of them.
Test, test. How about that? Well, it's hard to follow up some great information that we just heard. I'd like to thank Madeira Beach for having me speak again this year, and I guess I'll be a little different. I got a presentation that you guys can look at instead of my ugly face. I'm going to try to go over some just hurricane facts, some stuff about spaghetti models. It seems like everybody's intrigued with spaghetti models. And to keep it kind of short, I worked hard on storm surge and how it affects our area here, especially in Pinellas County. So let's see if this works. A little bit about myself. I am an amateur, as mentioned by the Pinellas County EOC. But I got involved with this as a hobby, and it still is a hobby, but it's kind of become a little bit more. You can Google, but definitely have had a good ride, and you can see some pictures there with some hurricane hunters. The Red Cross has been at the house, got to be friends with Jim Cantori, and even had FEMA use the site one time. So I do run a website that has all the pertinent, pretty much all the government links, sites. I don't make up my own graphics. It's just your one-stop shop for tropics. So just if you're looking for information, it's another source to see models and what might be coming. There's some facts here. I got a lot of cool slides, but I'm not going to be up here that long, so you can kind of read along. I guess the big thing on this slide is storm deaths. Water is almost 90% of your deaths with hurricanes. And, they say you should hide from the wind, run from the water. That's because half of your deaths are typically storm surge, flood, inland flooding. So that's, a good point they keep talking about, especially where we live, surge, just get the heck out. That's your greatest risk more than anything. Of course, we have power outages. One thing that's not talked about enough is power outages and running generators in your house or garages. Believe it or not, I think half the deaths, they just had a big hurricane conference this week, and there's some stat out there that we're getting more deaths from carbon monoxide than we are actual storm deaths. So big important note, if you have a generator, don't run it in your house or garage, for sure. All right, cool little graphic here. People really like this one. This is all the hurricanes in the last 100 years or so. Nobody's safe. We've had hurricanes from Texas to Maine. So there's really nowhere to escape potential hurricanes. And of course, 2004 is when I got involved. We had the infamous year here in Florida with 4 storms that kind of got us all really involved with hurricanes. Season starts officially June 1st, but May 15th, the National Hurricane Center now starts issuing advisories, which is new. They did it last year. We get a lot of storms in May. We've had a named storm all the way back to 2015. So that's, 8 years in a row now. So it's not uncommon to get a storm in May. We get these old cold fronts that come down and stall out, and they usually spin us up a little low pressure system. So it's not uncommon. Doesn't mean we're going to have a busy season, but you get a system in May a lot. And of course, there's your peak months leading up to the heat of the summer when things are most active. Hurricane names, just a little tidbit, people think it's pretty neat. The names do repeat every 6 years. We're on 2022 now, so we start out with Alex. Unless it's a really, devastating storm, they'll retire the name like Michael, Andrew. But in 2027, we right back to Anna and Bill. And last year we had Anna and Elsa, so I think they're playing games with us a little bit. But so I put this out a few years ago. This was my forecast I put online, more of a joke. 0 to 20 storms, 0 to 20 hurricanes, 0 to 10 major hurricanes. Nobody really knows. I used to not really get involved with these preseason predictions. Because first off, it only takes one. If you remember, Andrew was first named storm of 1992, August 24th, right? Everybody's probably like, the season's dead, blah, 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 blah. First storm of that year was a Category 5. So a lot of storms could be fish storms. I mean, we could have 25, 30 storms, and 25, 30 could miss land altogether. So just remember, people live in Bermuda. People hate the name fish storm when they live in Bermuda. So don't worry about the predictions. Don't worry about the hype. Just have a plan. Stay aware. Great stuff that's been talked about already. But this is the official outlook. This just came out this week from Colorado State University. They're the big dogs. That's the one everybody uses, and they are predicting a above average season this year. And it's basically a couple things. Water is warmer than average, and we're in this La Nina pattern, which you probably hear about all the time. And it's a weird phenomenon. It basically just means the Pacific waters are cooler, producing less wind shear on our side, and it allows hurricanes to be a little bit more conductive for development. So they're predicting an above average season. And just to note, just to keep Florida, keep a little drama for you. Orlando Station West, which is Eric Burris, he's a big hurricane buff, but he predicted Florida is the #1 hot spot this year. Not good for us, but we should always be prepared regardless. So Florida's, due, unfortunately, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But just here's a couple cool pages that's really put out there to put things in perspective. You hear about only Category 1, and these updated numbers to 2020, 185 direct deaths, $110 billion of damage. Florence was a Category 4 that ended up being a Category 1. Everybody blew it off because, it's weakening. It turned out, $24 billion in damage, and it was only a Category 1. And so was Sandy, believe it or not. So just don't fall into that trap of it's only a Category 1. All right, a little bit about spaghetti models. This is kind of my thing. This is what started me. Little joke I do a lot of kids presentations. They think that's funny. So my wife's like, you still use that stupid thing? So anyway. All right, so here's some facts on spaghetti models. So you probably see these squiggly little lines every time the news station's on. And I was in love with these things. Like when 2004, I was like, I was addicted to these things. Like every time they come out, I'm like, there's one coming. So there's some key notes. Every little spaghetti model is a different brain, basically. Everyone's a different computer. They all have different thought processes on where a storm's going to go. A few notes. The line means it's the center of the storm. They get their data from hurricane hunters, which is a cool thing. Hurricane hunters are a very vital part of storms because they give us a true center, and that gets fed into the models. Models run every 6 to 12 hours. They look at current weather patterns. They even look at history. Like, okay, given this date, we had a storm here, the same weather pattern. So a lot of thought process goes into these. And as you can see, this is a really cool graphic. This was Irma, September 7th. The NHC cone is almost the exact pattern of these spaghetti models. So they are very vital. A lot of people don't like sharing them because it can get people confused, but they are a vital tool in figuring out the NHC cone that they use, that you see official. So a couple more notes here. This was, everybody remembers Irma. Powerful storm. It came across Africa. The initial models on September 5th, most of them had it even missing Florida, We had a few stray outliers. It's probably really hard to see, but there were a couple outliers that showed the west coast of Florida. September 6th came around. They widened out. September 7th, kind of back. So you hear Dennis Phillips talk about windshield wiper effects, flip-flop effects. He's right. These things bounce back and forth. So you really have to be alert on these changing weather patterns in the atmosphere. September 8th, you can see that was the winter. It did indeed shift over to the west coast of Florida. And, of course, by September 9th, it did come our side. So they had to evacuate. September 7th, we had the whole east coast of Florida evacuated because the majority of models predicted a landfall. So the whole point of this graphic is you can't get wrapped up on just one. There's a lot of thought process on outliers, trends, not getting bought into every individual model run, and things that automatically kind of end up back where they started. So it's fun. It's kind of like a hobby tracking these things. Couple examples here early on with Irma, the Euro. Have you heard about this, right? The two popular models are the Euro and GFS. You'll hear every newscaster talk about the Euro, GFS. Well, sometimes one's right and sometimes one's wrong. The Euro originally had Irma going out to sea on the east coast of Florida. GFS ultimately won. And if you remember Sandy, it was the opposite. The Euro showed it hitting the New York area, and the GFS had it going out to sea. So just a cool little tidbit there. All right, this is where we get into our little area. I get really excited talking about this because of what's been happening here with Pinellas County lately. But tropical storms spin counterclockwise, obviously, and so much can affect what we get from where this storm is. And I'm going to show you great examples with Ada. And the following year, last year, we had a storm called Elsa, if you remember, and it was completely opposite. So cool little graphic here now. All right, so my daughter, which hates this, but that she is, she's standing in the exact same spot in Oldsmar. In 2016, on your right, we had a storm that passed way to our north, and there's a graphic showing that. It hit the panhandle. That was Hurricane Hermine. It didn't even come close to us, but the counterclockwise winds pushed all that water into Tampa Bay. And that's the same dock with the storm way far away. And then next year, we had this weird phenomenon. Everybody, remember you watching the news, it's like the water's disappearing, like down in the Bahamas and down in Naples. It's like, where'd the water go? Where'd the water go? And everybody rushed out. It was the craziest thing, including us. And you could walk out at Oldsmar, quarter-mile spots. The water just disappeared. And it was because Irma, to our south, actually counterclockwise blew all the water out of the bay because of the counterclockwise nature. So the angle of impact is everything on a storm. And it's why I'm going to show you a couple things. It's so hard to predict storm surge, and these forecasters have such a hard time. And then they get in trouble because we didn't get what they expected. So Irma, to your right, they're expecting 5 to 8 feet in Tampa Bay. Now, think about this. Ada was only like 3 to 5. And I don't know, 3 foot, that's pretty significant. Storm was projected to go to our north of Tampa Bay. Ultimately, it went to the south, Key West, and Naples. That's why we had this reverse effect of surge. Another example was Hurricane Laura a couple years ago. Just a 20-mile shift, they figured, would have been like hundreds of thousands of people would have been underwater. Just that little bit of 20-mile shift saved Lake Charles, at least from the surge. They still got wind. But a couple of these slosh maps, so you heard Pinellas County mentioned they've updated our slosh maps. These are your estimated what could happen, worst case scenario. And what's fascinating with this is Pinellas County under Category 3, we could become an island. And these are real models, okay? Where I live, in Oldsmar, that watershed all the way through Tarpon Springs could be a continuous flow of water. I mean, these are real-life Category 3 worst-case scenarios. So that's why it's so important to evacuate. We saw with Ada again how much water we had, and that was a storm that didn't even directly impact us. I of course, storm angle is everything. So these are worst-case models. Now, of course, my daughter again, Emily, she'll watch this one day and say, Dad. But by our school, we have one of those surge maps about a mile north of Tampa Bay, showing where the worst-case scenario would be. Now, there's a new phenomenon called storm tide, which I learned a lot about with Ada. Storm surge is not including tide. So storm tide is on top of surge, and that's what got us in trouble 2 years ago, was we had a higher than normal tide because of the full moon and other different effects. And of course, here we go. This is Ada. So our official forecast was 3 to 5 foot here as the storm passed. And this is the actual radar of Ada as it came by. So it was 60 miles off the coast. And we had tremendous flooding all the way to Oldsmar, Tampa Bay. Hundreds of homes ultimately were flooded. And it came at the right time. Worst time. We had high tide at midnight. Just the angle, the winds, it was a deepening pressure system, and it was, significant. That was Bayshore Boulevard up in Safety Harbor. I took that picture of a truck submerged. The whole road was underwater. So that's pretty much the what we got to worry about. And that was a storm 60 miles off the coast, and it was only a tropical storm. Now we're going to fast forward to the following year. We had a storm called Elsa. It looked like it was going to be the same thing. The NHC forecast predicted 3 to 5 foot of surge. Storm dissipated as it came on approach. You can see it on the satellite. It just dissipated. And the hurricane hunters found pressures rising at the last second, and we had no effects. So 2 storms, totally different, outcomes. It just makes you, you just got to be prepared for anything. Anything can happen. With Ada, some local meteorologists blew it off as just like an average thunderstorm, and if people went to bed and have no idea that this possibly could happen. But if they would have predicted it with this, nothing did happen. So every storm's a different animal. You just got to think sometimes worst case scenario and make your own choices like they mentioned. If you feel like you need to evacuate, and that's kind of my site. One thing people like about what I do is I usually put all the scenarios out there. People think for themselves, but there are scenarios where you like I'm going to show you with some of these rapidly intensifying hurricanes, you might only have a couple days to make a decision. But if you're really a science geeky person, there's something called the MJO. You can Google it. It was another reasoning that this storm fell apart. But I got all that information on my site. All right, a couple more minutes. I cut half of this stuff out. All right, so is the Florida West Coast protected? Some people think we have ancient American Indian mounds that protect us, right? There's Google, there's articles all over the place about that. Maybe, who knows? But this graphic shows the East Coast in Florida, the highest impacted lands are your darker colors like reds, oranges, and yellows. Places that have been hit the least are blues. And the reason, first off, you look to Tampa Bay, we just celebrate, you can't celebrate a hurricane, but we had a Category 3 1921 hurricane now 101 years ago. It hit Tarpon Springs north of us, Tampa Bay in ruins. It was a Category 3. It devastated, demolished Oldsmar, and that was 100 years ago. So it can happen, and it will happen again. But if you look at Florida West Coast, very light impacts compared to, obviously, the Gulf, Texas. Most of the storms, I got a graphic in the middle there for August, most of the storms that come across Africa don't have that time to turn up into us because they're just chugging along. There's the strong Bermuda high pressure system you hear about every year. It just keeps things chugging to the Gulf of Mexico. Our worst time of the year is October, which is on the bottom there, and that's where we had Michael. That's where we had this Tarpon Springs. That's when we had Ada. So we're looking at more storms down in the Caribbean later in the season that come from like old cold fronts or just stalled out systems down there. That's why less storms here, but we're still susceptible to storms. And unfortunately, at that time of the year, the water's the hottest. And as we saw with Michael, it can blow up fast. And that's one of the last graphics here. So this is a very interesting fact. We've only had 4 Category 5 landfalls for the CONUS U.S. I thought there was more, but we had 4 Category 5s. And all 4 of those Category 5s were tropical storms 3 days out. Fact. And that is crazy if you think about it, because 3 days out, you're like, hey, tropical storm doesn't mean nothing. Well, Michael was just a little tropical storm, and all of a sudden it blew up to a Category 5. So sometimes you don't have a lot of time to prepare. And that's where these spaghetti models and long-range models, you can, do yourself, or I talk about them all the time. Sometimes they're valuable because you sometimes only have a few days to decide if you're going to evacuate or not. So, and of course, there's your Saffir-Simpson scales and all that good stuff, which I got on the site. Last one here before the end. A couple things I find very important. People don't really take a lot of, I don't know if the right word, interest or knowledge of, or maybe the NHC could do a little better job of. The typical maps you see on the right are your hurricane warning areas. But that's not telling the whole story. This is Michael for both graphics. Michael had Category 3 winds all the way up into Georgia and Alabama. It was pretty severe. So a lot of people get caught off guard. They think it's just a coastal event. And when indeed, in fact, everybody that evacuated for Charlie went to Orlando, right? And Orlando had the worst damage of anybody, and that's where people evacuated to, not really thinking, hey, the storm's going to still be a hurricane by the time it gets to Orlando. So, and the other thing, too, is these little points on the NHC map sometimes don't tell the story. If the storm's strengthening, it can still be stronger than what they're showing at 7 a.m. Wednesday. There's been a lot of storms strengthen that last little 6 hours that kind of go from a 1 to a 2 or a 3. And this is a good one. It's probably the most valuable thing you'll ever learn because my wife's the worst at understanding the difference between a watch and a warning. I think 99% of people get them confused. But if you want to know the difference of a watch is you have the ingredients to make a taco, right? Like the ingredients, but the warning is the taco. So, Yeah, I mean, because I don't know if it's a WW, but everybody gets them messed up. So watch means you got the ingredients. The warning means it's there. Right. So it could happen. It's going to happen. So that's just think of the tacos. But there you go. That was it. I hope you enjoyed it. I got one little thing I'm going to play while we say goodbye. But this is some Hurricane Ada coverage. I don't know if you can hit play, Phil. But if you got any questions, appreciate it. Again, thank you for inviting me down here to Madeira Beach. Be back next year. Well, this was Ada footage that I took. If you're new to the area, sorry, good stuff. But.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you again all as you watch the footage. Again, please prepare, ask questions, stop by, do everything that you need to do, and thank you again for coming out. Please visit some of the vendors, chat with our staff. A big thank you to our staff, our Mayor John Hendricks, Madeira Beach Commission, and our Public Works, Fire, Recreation, Community Development, and also thank you to Megan Powers and the City Manager's Office for the coordination. Thank you all and stay safe out there.